man yet has fought with it and lived.
Only one person in a million can survive.
Survive. That's just what we do.
Yeah! I just hope we can win a game.
It's a good start.
It's a great start.
It's the first win.
Welcome to Survivor 2025, presented by Seize the Gap Fantasy Football. I'm Jamie G, and I'm back with Magnum to give you our Survivor picks and strategy for Week 3 of the 2025 NFL season. Mills, we've been doing this long enough to know that things aren't going to stay this boring for too much longer here in Survivor Contest, right? Feels like maybe the shoe's about to drop sometime soon.
Yeah, the whole Admiral Akbar, like, oh, it's a trap. Like, you've heard of trap games. This feels a little bit like a trap week, especially compared to last year, where it was just basically a massacre for the first 5 weeks or so, with one of the biggest favorites going down each week. So, whatever, tread softly and carry a big stick. That's how we're trying to do things here on Survivor 2025, presented by Seize the Gap Fantasy Football. Thanks for checking out the show. We hope that we can help you out. You can find our content wherever you get your pods and on the YouTube. Find us on social media at Seize the Gap FF and on the web at seizethegapff.com. We try to keep it nice and easy to remember, just like the flaps, FLAPS. Follow, like, and please subscribe. If you had fun, please touch the thumb.
Before we get into Week 3, we do need to close the book on Week 2 with a little thing we call transparency time. Mills, what are we looking like through 2 weeks?
Last week was a good one for us. Jamie G, you hit your lock with the Ravens. I hit my lock with the Cowboys. Had to sweat it out in overtime, but a win is a win is a win. You hit your deep. You had the Chargers. Not much sweat involved there on the late game on Monday Night Football. I hit the Patriots. Once again, a sweater, but when you hit the road dog to win as your deep, you're feeling pretty good in the Survivor. We had the full Frankie Four Fingers fade. We both faded the San Francisco 49ers at New Orleans, but they got it done with McCorkle Jones at quarterback, so neither one of us hit our fades. On the season, we were both 2 for 2, hitting 100% of our locks. You're 1 for 2 on the deeps. You were at 50%. I've hit both of my deeps, so I'm at 100%. We have both tried fading the team playing New Orleans the first 2 weeks. It hasn't worked out so far. Will we go back to the well a third time? Will we not? Stay right here and find out.
And shout out to Wu-Tang Financial, the official sponsor of the Survivor Stock Watch. Remember to diversify your bonds. And that Wu-Tang is for the children.
That it is. 2 teams up this week. First, we have the Atlanta Falcons. Previously, we thought they could be maybe a little bit of a punching bag. They were kind of on the line between the bag and the wild card. I think they get the upgrade to wild card here. They played the Bucks pretty tough in week 1. Very convincing win against the Vikings in week 2. And then you have the Dallas Cowboys coming in again, another team kind of right on the line between a possible punching bag and a wild card. Despite only getting 1 win in 2 weeks, it was a wild win. They played a wild one against the Eagles in week 1, so it makes sense that it would be a wild card, right? So again, these are teams that you're not sure that you're going to go against or go with. That's what makes them a wild card. Jamie G, any thoughts on either of the 2 teams whose stock is up this week in Survivor?
The matchups aren't where I really want them to be. I think, if you dig down deep, you could, you can kind of get comfortable with these. I like Atlanta a lot. Their defense really impressed me. And, we'll talk about them later in the show. Dallas, I'd worry about their defense, but I think their offense, can score some points. So both of them are good, but not necessarily slam dunks.
I think the main thing is Atlanta. Now you're going to feel better when you get those Saints matchups a little bit later in the season. You get the Carolina
100%.
matchup this week and another one. And I think you're feeling a little bit better about possibly using them in those. So, and again, Dallas is going to be a bit of a wild card if you've used them last week. Probably a good spot because the schedule is a little bit funky, but there are a couple of chances you'll have to use them. As far as 2 teams down, we have the Kansas City Chiefs. They were originally a baller, a team, one of those teams you're looking like you might want to save. Now I think it's safe to throw them down into the wild card range. And then the Chicago Bears, who we previously had as a wild card, who are now very, very quickly approaching punching bag range. Not sure if you're just automatically going against them or anything, but at this point, you can't really be showing too much hesitation in attacking the Bears in Survivor. Jamie G, any thoughts on the 2 teams down other than to say, I'm sure you're enjoying Kansas City starting 0-2?
Yeah, definitely am. But they're not they're gonna start winning some games. I mean, they're gonna figure things out a little bit. They're struggling offensively. Patrick Mahomes is basically just the whole offense right now. And defensively, they're not as stout and dominant as we've seen in years past yet. The Bears, on the other hand, I think the Bears could stay in this bag category longer than people think. And I think it's time to kind of start recognizing that. I don't know that this is going to be the miraculous year everyone was hoping for. The talents, there's a lot of talent there. I think the coaching staff will figure it out, but I don't know that it's going to happen this year. I think they're going to be more in this bag than they are in the wild card spot going forward, is my takeaway through the first 2 weeks.
If they turn it on, my guess is it's in the final third of the season then, when kind of they're out of the playoff mix and they kind of start making decisions, regardless of what you're doing, they're looking forward to next year. Maybe the light bulb turns on a little bit for Caleb Williams, some of the rookies, second-year players they have on offense, that kind of thing. So this might be the opportune time to go against them here in the first, two-thirds of the season or so.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Let's go ahead and start week 3 here by highlighting the biggest favorites on the board. Mills, which teams are supposed to win this week?
Well, you're going to be terrified because right up top, we have your Buffalo Bills on Thursday Night Football, 12.5-point favorites at home against the Dolphins. Then we have the Green Bay Packers, 8.5-point favorites traveling to Cleveland to face the Browns. Then the Seattle Seahawks are 7.5-point favorites at home against the Saints. The Tampa Bay Bucks are 7-point home favorites against the Jets, who might possibly be starting Tyrod Taylor at quarterback with Justin Fields still in the concussion protocol. The Kansas City Chiefs are somehow a 6.5-point road favorite, maybe because they're traveling to New Jersey to face the New York Giants. Then in a 6-point favorite, we have the Atlanta Falcons on the road in a divisional matchup at Carolina. And then finally, the Baltimore Ravens are 4.5-point favorites at home against the Detroit Lions. That is everybody favored by more than 3.5 points. And Jamie G, I think this is a week where you look up here, we've got some options we feel pretty comfortable about. So does this make it a week where you're a little bit more likely maybe to look ahead and consider the future opportunities for using these teams when trying to come up with the mix of teams to use, especially if you're in a contest where you have multiple entries?
I think so, just because it's so top heavy this week, and you can kind of pick and choose and feel good with more than two or three options or so. I think those are the weeks where it really makes sense to kind of see, okay, which one, if both of them feel like locks to me, which one is more valuable down the stretch.
I completely agree with you here. I mean, when you get to pick and choose, consider it a luxury, a champagne problem. So this week on the surface, like, seems pretty nice, especially with those top couple options. We mentioned it at the top, man. It's been a very, very clean year in Survivor. What's your worry level about this possibly being a creeper bloodbath week where we see, like, two of these four teams we really like lose? And there's no reason to think it, but just because it hasn't happened, we've had a lot of close calls here with favorites eking it out at the very end of games. Things could be a lot different. It's just a couple plays went a different way. What's your level of worry about this being kind of a creeper bloodbath week?
I think it's primed. I think it's primed. And maybe that's just still built up scar tissue from last season where we saw essentially one or two big upsets every single week. For the first couple of weeks of the season, it was absolutely just treacherous, muddy water to get through. I think it's coming though. There really hasn't been one substantial upset yet this season. And so, granted, it's only week 3. I get it. We've been close a couple times, most notably Dallas last week. Arizona's kind of danced around it a little bit, but there hasn't been that big upset. It's just a matter of time before it happens, Bills. Feels like this week one of these teams, one of the big 4 or 5, it feels like is going to lose, right?
It really does. And we have some thoughts about that. Make sure you stay right here when we get into our fades.
The only other thing I was going to say about it too, Mills, is situationally, you now have some teams that already their backs up against the wall, and we'll see how they respond. I mean, most notably that Kansas City Giants game. I mean, both teams are in a real bad spot at 0-2 facing off against each other. So there's just a lot of that this week that I think adds to that flavor of, like, there could be some upsets here.
Yeah, it's one of those, I believe 11% of teams starting 0-2 have made the playoffs since the year 2000 or something like that. You get to 0-3 and you're well into the single digit percentiles. So then it's a real long shot there. So you are right. We could see some crazy stuff happen this week. One thing that could be crazy, man, are we willing to trust Sam Darnold here? I mean, we're worried about, is he bad Sam or is he like, goddamn Sam? You got a good Sam Darnold nickname. I know we have like good Baker, bad Baker, but I feel like I'm being sucked into maybe a good Sam week this week. How are you feeling about that one? Because I don't know how many other times we're going to feel good about using the Seahawks.
No, and you gotta love the fact that they're at home against a Saints team that's really struggling to find. I mean, give Spencer Rattler credit. They're trying and everything, man, but they're just struggling to find the ability to score enough points to keep up with a halfway decent NFL offense here. And I think Seattle can do that at home. We saw the Kenneth Walker breakout game. Wouldn't shock me if Zach Charbonnet goes nuts at home this week. And I think Darnold does enough here against a pretty poor New Orleans Saints team. And I don't know that I'm ever rushing out and being like, yes, I want to use Sunshine Sam in the Seattle again. So I like the spot this week.
I'll give Darnold credit, man. Even if he does turn it over, he's done a pretty good job of showing that he'll come back and keep firing. He's got a short memory for the most part, and that's definitely something you want to see, especially if you're going to make mistakes to fall behind, that you can dig yourself out of the hole that you dug for yourself. And he's shown a little bit of that moxie, even a little bit against Pittsburgh, where the game could have gotten out of control, and then he really locked it down there and played a very, very nice second half. And one game that could get a little bit interesting because of the injury factor. As we record this, we do not know if Justin Fields will be in at quarterback for the Jets, but Jamie G's old friend, Tyrod Taylor, could be in there. And Tyrod Taylor's a perfectly serviceable quarterback. He's not a guy you could start long term, but he could go in there, win you a game. He generally won't turn the ball over. He'll be willing to tuck it and move the chains when necessary, but that Jet defense has been really bad. Do you think Tyrod Taylor gives the Jets a puncher's chance there in Tampa Bay, at least enough to the degree that you'd be willing to kind of back off of the Bucs a little bit and survive it this week?
Yes. And here's the crazy thing about that is the Bucks, I think, are a good team. I think they'll be in the thing way down the stretch. But I do think that we've seen kind of the tale of two cities with the Jets. They played a pretty good game week one against Pittsburgh and then got steamrolled against the Bills last week. Tyrod Taylor, I think, can come in there, still offer some rushing upside. And you saw, there's some kinks in the armor on that Bucks defense where I think, he's not going to make the big mistake. He's not going to turn the ball over. He's going to be efficient in that offense. I think you can run the football on him a little bit. I think that it could be, man. I think that's one that a little bit, the Bucks have won 2 games on last second heroics from Baker Mayfield. It's not a recipe to win long term. Could this be a little bit of an upset alert? I think so. And I think the Jets, man, for better or worse, I think they're going to get some hard coaching this week, and we'll see what happens. But I do think he could. It does worry me just a little bit.
He does not possess Justin Fields' gifts, especially at his age, but they shouldn't have to change too much of the playbook, so that helps too.
Yeah.
He'll be fairly comfortable with the guys in there. And always pay attention when the backup quarterback comes in. There's usually like one kind of backup tight end or receiver that they latch onto because they practice with them. So if you're playing on DraftKings or something like that, you're looking for a deep fantasy sleeper, always pay attention to the guys a little bit further down the depth chart there. Maybe go look at the couple of possessions that Taylor played against the Bills in garbage time there because he did look pretty good.
Absolutely. And we've come up with many survivor rules and systems over the years, but it never hurts to stop and ask. Maybe, just maybe, it's not more complex than that. This is our simple system. Very simple system, really. Every week, we take the biggest favorite still available to us. That's it. Nothing more complex than that. Mills, how did we do last week, and who are we taking in week 3? Go Bills.
Last week we had the Ravens, 12.5-point favorites at home against the Browns. They won, so the simple system is now 2-0 on the season. We cannot use Philadelphia or Baltimore, so we are using Jamie G's Buffalo Bills, biggest favorite on the board this week. 12.5-point favorites at home versus the Dolphins on Thursday Night Football. Feeling good about it, man. I know you're a little bit nervous, but again, I think the Dolphins could be the biggest train wreck in the NFL. So if you got to go against somebody, they're kind of the best team to go against, despite being a divisional rival.
Yeah, and it's at home, and I give that. And you know what? If I can just get through this one with a win, I won't have to worry about using the Bills again for the rest of the season.
It's exactly what I said about using the Eagles in week 1 against the Cowboys. Legitimately verbatim what I said.
Oh, let's hope we both get through here. Appreciate that. And go ahead and hit play on the BGs because it is time for the top 5 to stay alive. We each ranked our top 5 survivor options for this week without considering where we might use them down the road. All that matters here is staying alive to see week 4. That's it. Mills, I think we know who number 1 will be, but who else made the top 5 for week 2?
You never know when you can be surprised. Like the idea that you'd be playing a BG's tape instead of an 8-track And if you know what an 8-track is, we like you. Go ahead and make sure you like, subscribe, that kind of thing. We understand what the 8-track is. In week 2, the top 5 was 5-0, hit all of our picks: Baltimore, Buffalo, Arizona, Dallas, and the Rams. On the season, we are 9-0 on our top 5. For this week, it's, I think, the first time ever, Jamie G, we had the exact same top 5. At 5, we have the Bucks, 7-point favorites at home versus the Jets. Then we have Atlanta, -5.5-point favorites at the Carolina Panthers. Then at 3, we have the Seattle Seahawks, 7.5-point favorites at home versus the Saints. And then maybe the surprise, your Buffalo Bills at number 2, 12.5-point favorites at home versus the Vikings. And then at number 1, the Green Bay Packers, 8.5-point favorites on the road at the Browns. A little bit interesting up top. Again, this is a spot where Green Bay's schedule is a lot tougher than the Bills. You hate to look forward, but when it does come down to the tiebreaker, and then you have the divisional game factor. So that's why I went there. I'm kind of assuming Jamie G, because he's a Bills fan, just if it's a coin flip, you're going to not put the Bills at 1, because that's kind of how we do it. I was definitely a lot higher than you on the Baltimore Ravens. They're 4.5-point favorites against the Lions. The Ravens schedule doesn't. It's interesting because if you don't want to use them in a division game, you kind of have to pick and choose their spots. I love what Detroit did last week, but that was home against a Bears team I think is going the other way. So I think the Ravens could be a really interesting option if you are in a league where you have 5 or more entries and you want to get a little bit of leverage on the field. I'm not running out to do it, but I do feel confident that they get this win against Detroit. Am I being too bold, Jamie G? I mean, you were willing to take the Eagles at Kansas City last week. Am I nuts thinking about maybe taking the Ravens at home against the Lions in Survivor?
Yes.
Okay, fair enough.
I mean, I see your logic. I just in a big field, I think it's great. But if you still got Baltimore left, I think there's going to be other spots where you're going to want to use them here, even in their own division. I know they played a close one against Cleveland and everything, but this would be a tough spot for me. It would be awesome if you did it in like one of the DraftKings like Millie Makers or whatever, because no one's going to use it. But other than that, I don't know that I would.
That's mostly what I'm talking about when you have at least, say, 5 entries in a larger
Yeah.
contest where you have a high degree of likelihood that at least somebody is going to make it through the season clean. In Jamie G, the one reason I can kind of lean a little bit towards the Ravens here, if you're in a deeper contest like that, is if it's going to be an absolute bloodbath week and you see a lot of favorites using, no one will be on them. And it would be a good way to offer yourself a little bit of a swerve off of that, just in case everything goes to hell. So that was kind of in the back of my brain when I was thinking about using the Ravens here.
100%, dude. And look, you're betting on a really good team. Could be a little bit of a shootout there. And you're right. You're going to have basically zero ownership. And if it is the bloodbath everyone thinks, you could win that game and maybe win a league, especially one of your smaller ones, depending on what happens. So, or seriously set yourself up. So I totally see the value in it.
And Jamie G, you were kind of a little bit higher on the Commanders than I was for sure, especially not knowing the status of Jaden Daniels. I pretty much was not willing to really mess with them in Survivor this week. You definitely were the highest on them. You had them at 8, so it's not like you're running out to use them, but you're at least considering them. Did you make that ranking thinking Daniels would play, or are you still willing to go there if it was Mariota?
I have this game as 7-point favorite if Daniels plays, 3.5 if it's Mariota. I think Mariota can come in there and win. What I saw from, don't get me wrong, no downplaying the Chargers and their legitimate defense. I really worry about what the Raiders have on offense. I haven't seen Genty be worth the draft capital yet. And that's not to say he won't be. Don't, Raiders fans, calm down. But I'm not seeing the protection. I'm not seeing Geno Smith be able to move the ball effectively. I'm not seeing, this high-powered offense that's going to be able to keep up. I think even with Mariota in the game, Washington can win this game. I really do. I'm just not a fan of what I'm seeing out of the Raiders yet. And even defensively, yes, Max Crosby's awesome. He'd be even more cool if there were 3 X's instead of 2 in his name. But all jokes aside, he's incredible. There's some players on that team, but I think even with Mariota, Washington can win this game.
I like the idea of trying to use them because it feels like Washington's going to be a tough team to really target at any particular point, especially if you don't want to use them in an NFC East divisional game. So I
Yep.
kind of like, getting while the getting's good. And this is a game that, we definitely had circled at least being one of the better options on the slate here. And I think, again, the the uncertainty about Daniel's status is really what's kind of pushing it down into the questionable range, especially after that Raiders performance on Monday Night Football. I think it's a good week in that most of the top options should be available for everybody. There were probably a few people that used the Bills against the Jets last week, but for the most part, you should have everyone available to you, so you don't have to worry about too much. But I think there are a bunch of games that, for Survivor purposes, we seem completely uninterested in. At Jamie G, we've got the Broncos at the Chargers, Cowboys at the Bears, Steelers at the Patriots, Rams at the Eagles, Bengals at the Vikings. Any interest in any of that in Survivor? Is it just no thanks?
Not really. It's just this week's just tough. I think there's too much good stuff up top. There's going to be a couple of deep options. I just don't know that I'm getting there on any of these.
I agree with you there. And I remember what I was going to say before.
It is time to go from the top 5 to the contest where we've each got 5 on it. This is a Survivor contest where we each started with 5 entries. We'll keep this going throughout the season, and hopefully it'll help those of you with multiple Survivor entries in a single contest. Mills, how did we do last week in week 2?
On the Luniz, man, I still had 5 entries left. Last week, I got all 5 through with Arizona, Dallas, Arizona, Baltimore, and Dallas. You had 4 entries left. You got all 4 through with Baltimore, Dallas, Baltimore, Arizona. I am in the lead, so I can choose who goes first. Jamie G, I'm going to go for you here. You have your first, second, fourth, and fifth entries left. You got 4 out of 5, still doing decent. Who are you riding with in week 3?
Yep, for Jamie G1, I'm going to go ahead and take Green Bay at Cleveland, all the reasons we talked about. For Jamie G2, I'm going to go ahead and use my Bills just once at home against Miami. I just think that there's going to be times you want to use them. I know this is a division game and a short week game, but they're playing a team that's kind of, there's some blood in the water. They're at home. Feels like a good time to go ahead and do it. For pick Jamie G pick number 4, I am going to take the Seattle Seahawks against New Orleans. I love this. I'm specifically pairing it where I've done some other teams that I don't think I'm going to use again, just to try to create some separation in this pick slot. Having a little strategy there. And then for Jamie G pick 5, I'm going to go ahead and take Atlanta at Carolina in a division battle. I saw a lot out of that Atlanta defense last week. I think they can get after Bryce Young, make his day absolutely miserable. And on the other side of the football, I think their running game is strong enough where they can even play small ball, do enough to win that game. Carolina's got way too many injuries on the offensive line. Atlanta, I like them here. I'm taking Atlanta.
You made a very salient point about looking ahead and trying to figure out when you're going to use teams. When you have multiple entries, it can get a little bit tricky. What I would advise doing is at least going through, look at the teams you've used already, look at their bye weeks and like the best remaining matchup they have. You could go to survivorgrid.com. They lay it out. It's a nice, easy way to kind of see a visual representation of that. But don't just throw them randomly, willy-nilly on there. Sometimes there's really no edge to be had. You know, you can go ahead and just kind of deploy them. I would probably at least try to differentiate so you don't have, don't use the same team like 3 weeks in a row so you have 2 of the exact same entries. I do like to try to find a little variety. So again, when you're managing multiple entries, sometimes it can be as much an art form as a science, but don't just throw stuff randomly in. Try to take a look ahead and figure out how these teams can fit the best way together. We have a lot of overlap this week. I have gone 2-2-1 the first 2 weeks where I've used 2 teams twice and 1 team once. I'm going to go 2-1-1-1 here, almost the same as you. On my first entry, top to bottom, I'm going to use Green Bay, Buffalo, Atlanta, Seattle, and Green Bay. So basically doing the same thing as you, but doubling up on Green Bay. Couple of spots you can use them there, but not as many as the Bills, who still get to get some nice matchups with those NFC South teams. So that's why I'm doubling up on Green Bay here. But otherwise, again, we kind of said we like this other group of the top 4 teams or so this week. So it's just a matter of how you deploy them and then hope for avoiding the bloodbath.
100%. Let's get into the big 3. These are our locks, our deeps, and fades. We're starting out with the locks here, which are exactly what they sound like. These are the teams we think are most likely to win this week. That being said, when we make these picks, we're also considering where we might want to use teams in the future. We can use a team once as our lock, so we need to make sure that it counts.
Week 1, Jamie G, you went with Denver. Week 2, Baltimore. Week 1, I went Philadelphia. Week 2, Dallas. And in week three, Jamie G, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 because we got a suitcase lock here, and that is the combination for our luggage. We are both taking the Green Bay Packers, 8.5 point favorites on the road at the Browns. For me, it was really just a scheduling issue. The Bills are the other clear-cut option here, but there are so many good opportunities to use them in the near future that I just felt more comfortable going with the Packers here. The road game doesn't bother me very much. They've looked great on both sides of the ball. I'm not scared of the Browns, Joe Flacco, the defense, any of it. Maybe it's a little bit closer than you want, but I'm not trying to cover, just trying to win. Is that about what you were thinking, or did you have a little bit of different calculus here when it came to taking the Packers as your lock?
Yeah, I think the Packers are going to be tough to, they look like a great team. You might want to use them a couple times, but I think the Bills, with the schedule that they have, and particularly some of the home games coming up, there's going to be plenty of good spots that you're going to want to use them in. And I just think, they're in line to have a big game here against Cleveland. I really don't have much worry there, so felt like the right time to use them for those reasons. Now we're going to go ahead and roll into the deeps. What we're trying to do here is find some teams flying under the radar with low ownership in Survivor leagues for this week. Usually, that means teams who aren't amongst the 5 most used teams in Survivor in the given week. But every week is built different. Same as our locks, we can only use a team once as our deep. Mills, kick us off.
I am 2-0, knock on wood, through the first 2 weeks. I have used Pittsburgh and New England, so I can't use either of those two. I'm going to take a chance, JBG. It feels a little bit thin, but I'm going to try to get ahead of the game, and maybe he'll turn into a pumpkin at some point, so you might as well go while he is still a prince or princess. Give me Daniel Jones, Indiana Jones, and the Colts, -3.5 point favorites at the Titans. The Colts have been better than I thought on defense. The offensive line is solidified. Jonathan Taylor could have a nice game here. I like what I've seen from Cam Ward. The Titans are taking a lot of stupid penalties as a team. They have some talent on defense, but they are bereft of talent on offense. Calvin Ridley and Tony Pollard are fine. I mean, Elick Ayomanor is okay as the Chicken Koku, but there are no world beaters there. Cam Ward needs a little bit of help as a rookie quarterback. I have enough confidence in the Colts to lean on that defense and the running game. If Daniel Jones keeps doing what he's doing, doesn't turn the ball over, I'm confident getting the win here. And then I don't have to try to figure it out later in case he turns into a pumpkin. So that's why I am taking the Colts as my deep. Jamie G, you lost in week 1 against the Colts. You had the Dolphins. Week 2, you won with the Chargers as your deep. Who are you going with in week 3? Who are you swimming in the deep with?
Yeah, I said it before. I really like this one. I'm taking Atlanta here against Carolina. They're 6 point favorites, so this might jump out and people might be considering them. But there's so many large favorites this week that I think they could fall kind of under the radar a little bit. Again, I think their defense is really going to cause havoc on Bryce Young. They were so aggressive flying off the football, making JJ McCarthy's life miserable. Carolina doesn't have the offensive line to protect Bryce Young here, and I think offensively, the two-headed running attack that they have with Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier, and there's just enough on the outside with London and Pitts, and Penix doesn't have to be superhuman. He can just complete the passes that are there, work the ball down the field, utilize that run game. I think there's more than enough there to spell a win here in a division game where I think Atlanta is clearly the better team. So I'm going to go ahead and take the Atlanta Falcons here.
I love that. In a vacuum, I would have probably taken them, but the fact that they get the 2 more matchups against the Saints and then another one against the Panthers, I just don't have the same amount of faith that the Colts are going to keep this up. So I kind of just wanted to strike while the iron was hot. So that was my thinking, but I very much am there with the Falcons.
Yeah, no, I totally love your logic. You use Indiana Jones and the Colts while you can.
Yeah, I'm taking some chances
that...
early in the season, but again, it doesn't matter when you go out in Survivor. That's the key. Yeah, it sucks if you go out in week 3, but it sucks if you go out in week 13. It literally doesn't matter. You win the same amount of money, 0. So I've tried over the years to, just steel myself into taking a couple more chances early in the season because it really helps open up different options for you as the season progresses if you're still alive.
The final picks are our fades. These are the teams you should avoid using in Survivor contests for this week, week 3. The goal here is to fade teams that are being used, heavy ownership in lots of Survivor contests. Unlike the other picks, we can fade a team as many times as we want, as long as they're being used by a large percentage of Survivor entries. Mills and I both faded the 49ers at the Saints last week, but Good old McCorkle Jones managed to guide the San Francisco 49ers to victory. So we're both 0-2 on the season, but in our defense here, none of the highly owned teams have lost yet. Maybe that changes in week 3.
Jamie G, it's not, it's a weird thing because everything happens in threes, but our guy Frankie has 4 fingers. Third straight week. We're going to try again, man. We're going back to the full Frankie 4-finger fade. We are both fading the Kansas City Chiefs in New Jersey against the Giants. Both teams back against the wall. Russell Wilson, literally nothing to lose here. I mean, he knows he's losing the job at some point. You saw that last week. He is in full DGAF mode here. The Chiefs are struggling to find any other options on offense outside of Patrick Mahomes' legs. It really looks like Travis Kelce is washed. I mean, if Tyquan Thornton is the guy you're most scared of, can the Chiefs really win this game? Seems kind of nuts to me that they're 6.5-point favorites. I would much rather, in Survivor, hold the Chiefs, call it week 10, give me the Raiders home game or something when they have Rashee Rice back. You at least know if, Xavier Worthy will be healthy. Maybe they've traded for Tyreek Hill by then. Anything else, no way I'm using the Chiefs here. No way, no how. So that was my logic. Jamie G, other than the fact that you are not a fan of the Chiefs, why are they your easy fade here?
Yeah, I mean, again, you're starting to see a little bit of spiraling too, some infighting on the team now, 2 games in a row. I get it. It's competitors that are used to winning championships. They're disappointed and pissed. We'll see how they respond. I worry about this offense of Kansas City and their ability to protect Patrick Mahomes against this defensive front of the Giants. And honestly, we saw the deep ball and where you can kind of attack, I think, the Chiefs a little bit is down the field. And we saw Giants do that last week. Now, it's not going to be as porous as the Cowboys secondary, but I think there's some opportunities there. Again, just on the road, a lot of pressure. It just feels like this is a tough spot. 6.5 points is a lot for a team that's 0-2 on the road. I know they're the Chiefs. I know it's Patrick Mahomes. 6.5 points is a lot for a team that's 0-2 on the road.
They just have so much more to lose than the Giants.
Yes.
Again, there's better spots in Survivor, especially this week, given the options. It's just, yes, it's a little bit of a formula play, but also I really think the Giants can legitimately win this game. It would not shock me.
Would not shock me. And you're going to get Kansas City once they got some players back at home and they're clicking a little bit on offense. You don't want to take them when they're 0-2 and they're only
do not take them at their lowest point just because of the number on the board. Like that number is partially a public number. If they weren't the Chiefs, it might be a 1.5 different.
In Survivor contests, much like Charlie Sheen, it's easy to get obsessed with winning. Sometimes we forget that picking losers works just as well. That's exactly what we're doing here on Losing to Win. It's a Survivor contest, but instead of picking a team to win every week, you have to pick a team to lose every week. Just like Survivor Leagues, you can only use a team once. Mills, did we manage to win by losing in week 2?
And Jamie G, we were actually successful in our losing. I have gone with the Giants in week 1, the Bears in week 2. Week 3, I'm going to continue down that track. I'm going to try to take a good team I think is going to lose. I'm trying to save the bad teams for later, so I'm going to take the Detroit Lions to lose at the Baltimore Ravens. I don't know how often I'll feel confident in the Lions losing, but I feel pretty good about them losing this week. So I'm trying to mix it up. In week 1, Jamie G, you took the chalk, Tennessee to lose. Week 2, you took the chalk, Cleveland to lose. Week 3, are you taking the chalk? You're taking the Miami Dolphins to lose, or are you going to go another way?
I'm going to go another way, but I'm not going to try to take a winning team just yet. I am going to take New Orleans to lose at Seattle.
Fair enough. I mean,
I understand. There's going to be plenty of time to use New Orleans later in the season, but I'm trying to stack some wins here until I kind of figure out the season a little bit more. Taking a little bit of a different approach. That's what I love about this. We're giving you 2 different looks on how to approach this. I'm going to go ahead and take New Orleans this week to lose.
And you can also see later in the season, like you'd be a little hesitant about taking New Orleans to lose in a divisional game, right? Especially if it's a home divisional game against the Falcons. And again, it's the same kind of things that creep in Survivor, but kind of flip to the mirror universe side of it. And I think this has been a useful exercise for trying to help us, look at both sides of the coin. And these contests really do exist. There are, at least on Splashboards, you can legitimately play in, loser Survivor leagues. And I always like when someone kind of takes the contest in the next logical step. So I like all the parts of this. So far, so good.
Yeah, it's got all the ingredients, man. We always tell you, have a plan and get lucky. So it's time to test our luck as we abide by the wheel in the sky. Every week, we put all the favored teams who haven't been chosen yet on the wheel. Then we spin the wheel and abide by its decision. That's where the get lucky part comes into play. Mills, did the wheel do us right last week and show me what we're working with in week 3?
Oh, the wheel's so good, baby. We love the wheel. Oh yeah, wheel,
Wheel.
baby. Week one, we won with Cincinnati. It was close, but we won. Week two, won with the Rams. So the wheel is 2-0. This week we have 16 options on the wheel. We have all 16 favorites available to us. Jamie G, are you rooting for anything in particular here? You want to go with our lock with the Packers. You trying to get the Bills out of the way. Do you want the wheel to force us to dig down a little bit deeper? Any preference from the wheel before we spin her?
This week I almost as nervous as I did in week 1 about just not knowing what the hell's going to happen. So I think I'm just gonna wheel take the wheel kind of thing. Like it's like you're in charge here. I'm your humble servant.
Yeah, I'm there kind of for Atlanta or Seattle maybe. I like
Yeah,
those kind of as teams we're not going to use as much, but maybe the
Green Bay
Bucks
I would
would be a
also
good
like.
one
I wouldn't
too.
mind.
Yeah, yeah, I would like the certainty of Green Bay as well. So let's see what the wheel has to offer for us this week. Okay, Jamie G, here we go. We are spinning the wheel to see what we're going to abide by in week 3.
Wheel, 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 wheel,
Wheel.
wheel,
Wheel.
wheel, wheel. Is that
That's
green?
an Indy. That's an
That's an
Indy.
Indiana Jones.
Oh, it is Indiana Jones by
I'm okay,
a
honestly, Mills. What a time to use them before it goes
Yeah,
bad
well,
out.
again, before he turns back into a pumpkin, so I'm okay with that. I would rather use Indy here than Philly, so I'm good with that.
You and
That
Wheel,
last little tick right here, dude.
yeah, dude. Just by a
A thin thread of electric current, dude. The Tony Stark stuff right there, man.
that's really it. Remember, getting lucky, while awesome, it's only half the battle. You also have to have a plan. We've got our official grand plan from way back at the ancient time of August. Yeah, August 2025, which we're tracking throughout the season. Mills, are things still going according to plan? Here we are in mid-September.
We've been gone till September, apparently, and we're doing a McCorkle Jones thing. He got us there last week. We had San Francisco. We were a little bit worried. Denver in week 1, so 2-0 on the season. And going into the year, we targeted the Seattle game at home against New Orleans. They're 7.5-point favorites. Still feeling good about it. I know last week we were a little bit hesitant, like, man, I don't know about McCorkle Jones. You had the other injuries, no George Kittle. We were a little bit hesitant about the 49ers. The plan came through. I got to say, I'm feeling pretty good about taking the Seahawks here. So the confidence level in the plan is maybe not an all-time high, but it's quite nice.
Gotta love the grand plan. And we're gonna close out the show by giving the picks for our single entry Seize the Gap Survivor contest. We're both clean through 2 weeks. I've used the Broncos and the Ravens so far. Mills, I am going to agree with the grand plan. I'm going to go ahead and pick Seattle at home against New Orleans. Look, I just think I don't know that I'm ever going to rush out to use Seattle again. I like them in this spot at home. I think the defense does enough to limit New Orleans. I can't see New Orleans scoring more than 14 to 20 points in this one. And I think offensively, Seattle's going to be able to run the football, do enough to be able to score some points here and win this thing at home, man. So I'm going to go ahead and take Seattle.
What you said. It's funny because we write these individually. I wrote this on the paper. You sent me your pick, and I'm like, oh man, we're doing the same thing. But I'm sticking to my guns here. I'm also taking Seattle. Same exact reasons you said.
I think that just about does it for week 2. Good luck this week. Remember, don't you worry, don't you fret, because we will be here each and every week during the season to help you survive all the way until the end. You got any questions about strategy, or if you're struggling with your pick this week, let us know. Drop a comment below or hit us up on social media. We will get back to you and give you our advice on what we would do. Best time to go ahead and tell you, like and subscribe so this shows up in your feed each and every week. Great to interact with you guys. We appreciate you riding with us all season. Mills will remind you of all the details and where you can find us.
This has been Survivor 2025 presented by Seize the Gap Fantasy Football. We have Survivor and more on our channel, which you can find wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Find us on the social media platforms at Seize the Gap FF and on the World Wide Web at seizethegapff.com. We try to keep it nice and easy to remember, just like those flaps, FLAPS, very crucial to our success. Follow, like, and please subscribe. If you had the fun, please click the thumb. I am Magnum Mills. He is Jamie G. Now that you've listened to us, now that you've watched us, all you need to do is have a plan and get lucky.
Stay lucky, my friend.
Tony Stark fights again for survival, and by just a thin thread of electric current, wins another victory.